Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we bring you a riveting tale from the Old Testament, a story of a king's deep reverence and uncontainable joy. Join us as we delve into 2 Samuel 6, where we witness David's desire to bring the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. In the realm of biblical tales, the story of David and the Ark stands out as a captivating and significant event. Rooted in faith, devotion, and divine intervention, this narrative from 2 Samuel 6 offers a glimpse into the life of King David, his reverence for the Ark, and the transformative power of faith. Background: 2 Samuel 6 recounts David's ambitious plan to bring the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred vessel representing God's presence among the Israelites, to the city of Jerusalem. After a long period of instability following Saul's death, David yearned to establish Jerusalem as the spiritual and political center of Israel. Aware of the Ark's significance, he sought to honor God and solidify his reign by relocating it. The journey begins. The Ark had resided in Kiriath Jearim for years, and David, accompanied by a multitude of armed men and thousands of enthusiastic followers, embarked on a journey to bring it to Jerusalem. The climactic nature of this procession showcases the importance of the Ark and its power to unite and inspire the people. Tragedy strikes. While en route, a tragic event occurred that puts a temporary halt to the journey. Uzzah, a man charged with guarding the Ark, reaches out to prevent it from falling after an ox stumbles, and he is struck dead. This incident highlights the sacredness and the awesome power inherent in the Ark, teaching a valuable lesson about the importance of following religious protocols. David's response. Initially overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, David momentarily abandons the plan to bring the Ark to Jerusalem. However, witnessing the blessings bestowed upon Obed-Edom, in whose house the Ark was temporarily placed, David recognized the significance of continuing his divine mission. His faith in God's covenant reignited, he successfully brings the Ark to Jerusalem, proceeding with great rejoicing and worship. The jubilant celebration. The momentous arrival of the Ark in Jerusalem became a grand celebration, epitomizing David's devotion to God. With joyous dancing, singing, and the sound of musical instruments reverberating throughout the city, the Ark finally finds its respected place within the tent prepared by David. The entire scene portrays an atmosphere of intense spiritual fervor and devotion towards God. Lessons learned. David's journey to bring the Ark carries valuable lessons for us today. It emphasizes the importance of seeking divine guidance and embracing faith in the face of adversity. The cautionary event of Uzzah's death reminds us of the need to approach religious practices with reverence and respect, recognizing the sanctity of sacred traditions. Conclusion. The story of David and the Ark in 2 Samuel 6 serves as a profound testament to the power of faith, devotion, and unwavering belief in God's covenant. It reflects David's determination to honor and establish God's presence in Jerusalem. This poignant narrative reminds us of the enduring significance of spiritual traditions and the transformative nature of faith in our lives. Sexar. Again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose, and went with all the people that were with him from Baale of Judah, to bring up from thence the Ark of God, whose name is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, that dwelleth between the cherubims. First year. And they set the Ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart. And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was at Gibeah, accompanying the Ark of God, and Ahio went before the Ark. 5. And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps, and on psalteries, and on timbrels, and on cornets, and on cymbals. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. 7. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of God. And David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez-Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day, and said, How shall the ark of the Lord come to me? 10. So David would not remove the ark of the Lord unto him into the city of David, but David carried it aside into the house of Obededom the Gittite. One, the Ark of God. This is a reference to the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was the most sacred object in the tabernacle which Moses and the people built in the wilderness years. It held the 10 Commandments, Aaron's staff, and also some manna. The Ark represented the fact that God was willing to dwell with his people, and his presence was with them. However, see in 1 Samuel 4:5 that there is nothing actually magical about the Ark. It did not automatically bring about victory over Israel's enemies, nor did it guarantee that God would bless his people or be with them. Eli's sons wrongly put their faith in the ark rather than in the God who commanded the ark to be built, and it cost them their lives. The ark is probably the most important spiritual object, relic in the Bible. Yet in the end it is still an object. Even today some charlatans place great importance on certain relics like the bones of saints, supposed pieces of the cross, cloths, holy water, and the like. Those people and those who follow them are focusing on the wrong thing, the creation rather than the Creator. And here in this verse we see that. God is described as being enthroned above the cherubim. God is above all of these things. 2. They placed the ark on a new cart. The Philistines had done this when they sent the ark back to Israel after capturing it. It was certainly an efficient and convenient method of transportation. Clearly, this method was much easier than carrying it for scores of miles. The problem was it was disobedient. God had commanded the priests to carry the ark with attached poles. That way was more respectful and also safer. Thus we learn a simple lesson. God's way is not always the easiest way. God's way was more difficult than their way, but easy is not equal to best. And in a minute we will see the consequences of this disobedience. Application. Do not always choose the easy way. Consider what is the best way, even if it is more difficult. 3. David and the people celebrated. Here we see the attitude of David and the people. They were excited. It is accurate to say they were sincere in their worship of God. It seems they had pure motivation. They had a good heart. David wanted the ark in Jerusalem as a reminder to all the people of God's presence with them and the importance of worshiping Jehovah alone. Many years later, David wanted a temple for the Lord. Both of these ideas show his desire to honor the Lord and lead his kingdom to honor the Lord. By contrast, Saul did not seek to honor the Lord. This is one of the reasons God said that David was a man after his own heart. So unfortunately, sincerity and good motivation are also not enough. Over 1,000 years later, Jesus would tell the women at the well that people must worship him in spirit and in truth. From this phrase, we learn that both a person's attitude and his behavior are important. The motivation and the action must both be correct. Sometimes people do a good action with a wrong motivation, such as the Pharisees giving lots of money to God. God is not pleased with it. But sometimes people do a wrong action, but with a sincere heart, like David here. God is also not pleased with it. Application. Learn to evaluate your actions and your motivations. Ask God for wisdom so that we do not commit sin in ignorance. Make sure you are serving and worshiping God in spirit and in truth. 4. Uzzah dies. God had already warned the people of Israel that touching the ark would result in death. Like many sins, one led to another until the cost was Uzzah's death. Take careful note of this passage. Uzzah did not set off that day to deliberately disobey God. I don't believe he had improper motivation. He was sincere in his desire to protect the ark from damage. One could even commend his passion, his zeal, and his quick reflexes. The problem was God had commanded that nobody touch the ark and warned that if they did, they would die. Sparing Uzzah would set a dangerous precedent. Allowing the ark to be transported by cows instead of his prescribed way would also set a dangerous precedent. People would then feel free to change God's divine laws and rituals to suit their own purposes and convenience. The result would be a man-made syncretic religion. Do you feel shocked by the story of Uzzah? If so, that is good. I think this story is supposed to shock us. It is supposed to show us how seriously God takes obedience. It is supposed to show us that sin is serious. Sin is serious whether it is intentional, like in the case of Ananias and Sapphira, or unintentional. Sin is serious whether it is premeditated or committed on the spot. This story should make us think. It should make us evaluate our actions. It should make us stop to make sure that we are obeying. 5. What does this teach us about God? God is just. God takes sin seriously. God takes his commands seriously. He does not always judge immediately. Most of the time he doesn't. But sometimes he chooses to make an example out of a case as a warning to everyone else. 6. What does this teach us about David? In this case, David failed in his leadership abilities. We don't know who made the decision to transport the ark like this, but it was the wrong decision, and David was in charge. So ultimately, he receives the blame. Because of his poor leadership in this, Uzzah died. Leaders must take their responsibility seriously. 7. David became afraid. It is a reasonable response. We should fear the Lord, especially when we sin. 11. And the ark of the Lord continued in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. 12. And it was told King David, saying, The Lord hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom, and all that pertaineth unto him, because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. 13. And it was so, that when they that bare the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed oxen and fatlings. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with a linen ephod. 15. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. 16. And as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal Saul's daughter looked through a window, and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord, and set it in his place, in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. 18. And as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. 19. And he dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the women as men, to every one a cake of bread, and a good piece of flesh, and a flagon of wine. So all the people departed every one to his house. 20. Then David returned to bless his household. And Michal the daughter of Saul came out to meet David, and said, How glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself. 21. And David said unto Michal, It was before the Lord, which chose me before thy father and before all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord. 2. And I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in mine own sight, and of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor. Therefore Michal the daughter of Saul had no child unto the day of her death. One David heard that Obed-Edom's house had been blessed. It was this news which prompted him to finish the job. 2. David attempted to bring the ark the second time. The first time failed. But we should know that sometimes we will fail in our walks with the Lord. Sometimes we will fall. When we do, we must get up, not give up. David chose to finish the job he had started. Although he hadn't heard the verses before, he unknowingly was applying Philippians 3:10-13 by forgetting the past and pushing ahead toward the goal in front of him. Application. If you make a mistake, don't let it defeat you over and over again. When you fall, get up. Make the decision to move forward to serve the Lord again. 3. David learned from his mistake. This time we see that the ark was transported by bearers as commanded by God. David did not try the same way again. He did not repeat his same mistake. He did not pridefully double down and dare God to do something about it. Instead, he humbly learned the reason behind God's anger and made sure to correct it. That is a sign of true repentance. 4. David was dancing. Discuss cross-references and dancing raising hands before the Lord. 5. David and Michal. We see that Michal's love for David was very fickle and fleshly. His exuberance for the Lord was embarrassing for her. She thought he wasn't acting dignified like a king should. But she didn't realize that a king's primary job is not to protect his own face, but instead lead to the people to worship and honor the Lord. David certainly did not care about his face. Michal expressed her anger toward David. David responded in kind. He wasn't very gentle to Michal. Rather, he was clearly upset and let her know. It is not a very good picture of how a husband should respond to his wife. It would have been better for David to calmly and quietly, and privately, lead her toward a better understanding of God and how to serve him. At least David should have tried to guide her toward a better relationship with God, instead of impatiently snapping at her. We see from this passage that David certainly loved God, but he was not perfect or close to it. He was a sinner like you and me. He was flawed like you and me. The good news is that God accepts sinners if we come to him in faith with sincere hearts. If we make mistakes, we must confess and move on. We must make God the priority over everything else. If we want to help you study the Bible, obey the Bible, and teach the Bible to others. Before we close, let's give a special thanks shout out to Jacqueline Donaire, 5 and 682, Rainbow Girls, 304, Jeffrey Dwayne Spears, TJ Goddaddy.